This is Module 3, Lesson 7 for Eureka Grade 6, Ordering Integers and Other Rational Numbers. I want to start by reminding you that integers would be positive or negative whole numbers, and rational numbers would be positive or negative whole numbers, fractions, decimals, etc. Okay, let's start with exercise 1. It says to graph the number 7 and its opposite on the number line, and then graph the number 5 and its opposite on the number line. Well, the number 7 we know is positive, so it's 7 units to the right of 0. We can put that right here. And then if we're looking for the opposite of positive 7, we know from previous lessons that that would be 7 units to the left of 0, or negative 7, which is right here. There we go. Now we need to graph the number positive 5 and its opposite on the number line. Well, positive 5 we know is 5 units to the right of 0 from previous lessons. And so the opposite of 5 units to the right of 0 would be 5 units to the left of 0, or negative 5. So the opposite of positive 5 is negative 5. That wasn't too bad. All right, let's go and look at the next one. Where does 7 lie in relation to 5 on the number line? So when it says in relation to, it wants to know where it's located. So if we look at 7, positive 7 and positive 5, we know that positive 7 is to the right of positive 5. That way. So we can write that in there as such. We can actually go so far as to say on the number line 7 is 2 units to the right of 5. And when we're talking about them, we don't have to always say positive. Okay, C asks us the same question, only now we're looking at the opposite of 7. So the opposite of 7 we know is negative 7. So where does the opposite of 7, or negative 7, lie on the number line in relation to the opposite of positive 5 or negative 5? And basically they want to know over here on the left-hand side, where is 7 in relation to negative 7 in relation to negative 5? In this case, negative 7 is to the left of negative 5. And that's all we have to write. All right, so on the number line, negative 7 is 2 units to the left of negative 5. And if you look closely at this, it's very interesting to note that to the right of negative 5 was the first one, and to the right of positive 5 was where 7 was located, but negative 7 was located to the left of negative 5. That's going to come into play a little bit later on. We're talking about left and right a lot today, so get ready for it. Okay, so example 1 asks us to look at temperatures. So right away when we think of temperatures, my mind is going to a vertical number line. So let's read it. The record low temperatures for a town of Maine are negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit for January and negative 19 degrees Fahrenheit for February. Order the numbers from least to greatest, and then explain how you arrived at that order, or at the order. Okay, so let's start by drawing let's write out our information first. We have negative 20 degrees for January. So I'm going to put January, negative 20 degrees. And actually, I'm not going to put the degrees. I'm just going to write the integer, negative 20. And then for February, we have negative 19. All right, so now I'm going to try a number line, a vertical number line. Okay, when doing a vertical number line, we don't necessarily have to have all of the numbers filled in. In this case, we're only looking for a negative 19, negative 20, so I can kind of put my 0 a little further up. I'm going to put it right about here. And when we're working with negative numbers, it's going to be below 0. So if I remember the negative numbers, it starts with negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, so negative 1 will be here, negative 2 will be here. I'm not going to keep writing all of them down to 20. That's a lot of numbers to write, so I'm going to guess. So first would come negative 19, and then would come negative 20. Okay, so now we have to decide which one is least to greatest. Well, the general rule of thumb for this one is the number that is below would be the number that is greatest. It also happens to be the farthest number from 0 when we're talking about negatives. So, but the one that comes first is negative 19, and the one that comes second is negative 20. So since negative 20 is below negative 19, that's actually the least. And then the negative 19 is actually the greater number. So if I wanted to order these, I would order them as such. Negative 20, and then negative 19. If you're on a number line, you're working towards up to 0. So since 19 is above, negative 19 is above negative 20, that makes it the greater number. It also, negative 20 happens to be the furthest away from 0. When we're talking about negative numbers, the number that's the furthest away will also be the least. Okay, so now we have to explain what I just said. So let me put it in words that you can understand. Okay, so since negative 20 is farthest away from 0, and negative 19 is actually above negative 20 on the vertical number line, then negative 20 is less than negative 19. All right, we're going to talk some more about the number lines and less than and greater than in the next few exercises. Exercises 2 through 4 says for each problem, order the rational numbers from least to greatest. So we're sticking with least to greatest. So we will need to read the problem, and we also want to draw a number line. Okay? And then explain our answer again. We also have to explain our answer. So we have to draw a number line and read the problem. Okay. John's time for running the mile in gym class is 9.2 minutes. Jackie's time is 9.18 minutes. Who ran the mile in less time? Well, let's see. Let's put their times down first. John's was 9.2 minutes. I'm just going to put the integer. And Jackie was 9.18 minutes. Or 9.18 is the integer. Okay. Then they want us to draw a number line. Okay, we can draw a number line. All right, here's our line. Since we are making a number starting at the number 9, I'm going to start my 0 over here. They're all positive numbers, so I'm going to go to about here with 9. And then since the number's going to be in between 9 and it looks like 10, I'm going to put a 10 right here. Now I have to determine which comes first, the 9 and 1800ths or the 9 and 2/10ths. Well, I have to go back to what I know about fractions and what I know about decimals. If you remember, if I'm working with division, when you have a number, there are always these zeros that I refer to as invisible zeros that you can make appear. So we could certainly do that as one way of doing it. What that means, and I want to show you that in the bottom real quick, is what I did was I took the 9 and 2/10ths and then the 9 and 1800ths, and I transferred them into fractions. So I changed them back to the fractions. This would be 2/10ths. This is the 9 and 1800ths. And then I found a common denominator. So the common denominator between 100 and 10 is 100. I kept the 9 wholes the same for both. And then I said, how did I get from 100 to 100? I kept it the same, so that stays the same here. And how did I get from 10 to 100? I multiplied it by 10. And I have to do the same to the top. 2 times 10 is 20. As you can see, that's what I have here, is the 20. So this is all I did in my head when I made that 0 appear. When you do IXL, they're going to expect you to be able to do this as well. Okay, so getting back to here. If we need to put our number line, we're in positive numbers. The first number that's going to come is the 18 is going to come before the 20. So on my number line, I'm going to put 9.18 right about here. And the 9.20, I'm going to put right after it, so right over here. And to stay true with what the value is, I'm going to take that 0 away. And keep it back to 9.2 because it's the same thing. And I want us to get used to that idea. Okay, so let's see what we've done. We've figured out our information, we've drawn our number line, and now we have to explain our answer. Let's go back to what we're trying to figure out. Which one is the least and which one is the greatest? Well, when we're working on a number line, here we want to go back and look at what we did at the beginning of this lesson with left to right. Since 9.2 is to the right of 9.18, that makes 9.2 the greater number. And if you look at the other way, 9.18 is to the left of 9.2, and to the left would be the least. So one way we can write this is, all right, so since 9.2 is to the right of 9.18, then 9.18 is less than 9.2. You can also say that 9.2 is greater than 9.8, but we were looking for the least because we need to know who had the least amount of time, so that's why we focus on it that way. And that means that Jackie ran the mile in less time than John. Now, we could have looked at this and said, oh yeah, I can tell that 9.18 is less than 9.20 when we're talking about positive and negative, but I want you to think about the left and right portion of this. All right, let's move on. Number 3, Mrs. Rodriguez is a teacher at Westbury Middle School. She gives bonus points on tests for outstanding written answers and deducts points for answers that are not written correctly. Not a bad idea. She uses rational numbers to represent the points. She wrote the following on students' papers. So student A got -2 points, whereas student B got -2.5 points. Question is, did student A or student B perform worse on the test? Worse is like saying less. So we're doing, again, less to greatest. All right, let's start with what we did before, and let's pull out our information. All right, we know that student A received a -2, and student B received -2.5. We wanted to find out which one did the worst, or which one did the greatest. We're going to start with a number line. All right, here's our number line. Since we're working with negative numbers this time, let's make our 0 here. And we're going to be working with -2, so we'll go ahead and put -1. And then if we move on, oh, that's not the right side. Let's try that again. 0 is here, so -1 is here, -2 is here, and then let's put -3 here. Well, we can figure out where -2 is. It's already there, right here. And if we want to find -2.5, it's on its way to 3, so is it to the right or to the left of -2? That's the question. Yeah, it is to the right of is to the left of -2. Wow, I'm not thinking straight today. It would be to the left, so that would be here. And this was where we would write -2.5, about halfway between, because remember our benchmarks. So there's -2.5. Now the question becomes, which one is less? Okay, so now they're both to the left of 0. Both of them are to the left of 0. However, -2.5 is also to the left of -2. So that should give us a clue. Yes, the clue is that -2.5 is the least. So if we're writing these in order, we would write -2.5 is the least, and then negative 2 would be the greatest between these two numbers. Okay, so now how do we write this out and explain our thinking? Okay, so what I just said was negative 2 and negative 2.5 are both to the left of 0, but negative 2.5 is to the left of negative 2, so negative 2.5 is less than negative 2. And that means that student B, looking back at who had 2.5, did less or did worse than student A. All right, let's talk about fish. A carp is swimming approximately 8 1/4 feet beneath the water's surface, and a sunfish is swimming approximately 3 1/2 feet beneath the water's surface. Which fish is swimming farther beneath the water's surface? We're talking about water surface, so I think the number line we should do is a vertical number line in this case. All right, here's our vertical number line. If we want to represent the Earth's surface, we can make that be our 0, and we'll put that right about here. Oops. Right about here. Okay, so if that's our vertical number line, I'm not going to try to put in between every one, although I could. I'm just going to bring it down to, we're working beneath, so beneath means it's going to be negative. And our negative numbers go negative 1, negative 2. Let's put negative 3 right here. Let's make that negative 3.5. And then if we were to continue down, we would put in our negative, let's put it right about here, our negative 8 1/4. And let's not forget to list out which one is which. So I also remembered to underline what the question is asking us to find, which is which fish was the fish that was farther beneath the water's surface. Okay, so I listed out our fish and our integers, and I put our integers, sorry, our rational numbers. I put our rational numbers on the number line. Now we have to determine which one is the least. If you remember from a few minutes ago, we talked about the least for negatives would be the one that would be the lowest or farthest from 0, and the one that is above would be the one that is the greater number. So there's two things to think about here. The one that is below and the lowest and the farthest from 0 is the least. So in this case, that would be the 8 1/4. And the one that is the negative 3 1/2 would be the greatest number. And we're looking at just these two. So if I wanted to put these in order from least to greatest, I would write negative 8 1/4 is the least, and then negative 3 1/2 is the greatest. So this one is least, and this one is greatest. And I would always point my arrow to the least. So I would say negative 8 1/3 is less than, that's my less than sign, negative 3 1/2. So the last part here is to explain what's going on and answer the question. Okay, so 8 1/4 is farther below 0 than negative 8 1/4 is farther below 0 than negative 3 1/2. So negative 8 1/4 is less than negative 3 1/2, which means the carp, which was this one here, is swimming farther beneath the water's surface. With the picture, it's much easier to see. Okay, so we're going to stop here today and continue this lesson in the next video. And we'll continue looking at greater than, less than. Thanks.